very exciting to introduce Amanda Sirianni, who is leading us through preparing your client for the U.S. citizenship exams. Amanda, I feel like your bio is like spot on today, especially with the awesome Goonies shirt. Amanda is a self-identified and self-taught nerd when it comes to citizenship exams. A volunteer with ReEstablish Richmond since 2018, she's helped several clients prepare for and successfully pass their citizenship exams. In her professional life, Amanda is a senior instructional designer for a housing finance agency. And Amanda, I'll turn things over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. All right, so I am going to go ahead and get the screen sharing going. All right, everyone should be able to see my screen. And then Katie, if you would just, periodically jump in if you see there's a relevant question. I think by the end, though, everyone's questions will be answered, but if not, we'll have room at the end to chat.
Perfect. You got it.
Okay, cool. All right. So hi, everyone. Thank you for showing up super early. It's early, but with coffee and hype music, or I don't know, just a really fun graphic shirt, you should be able to do everything. So my name is Amanda Sirianni. I am here to tell you about how to prepare your client for the U.S. citizenship exams. I learned it by accident. And I'm just here to tell you my story and my journey and what I've learned along the way. Right. So, Katie, if you can monitor the chat, if everyone who's here could just respond to this question or statement in the chat, rate your knowledge of the U.S. citizenship exams. And you just have to put a number. 1 is beginner, 5 is expert, and just let me know where you fall on that spectrum.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of 2s, some 3s, a 3.5, another 2.
I like the 3.5. Why are you not a 4? But that's okay. We'll talk about that.
Another 3. Yeah, so everyone seems to be sort of clustered in that area a bit.
Okay. All right.
2 to 3.
All right, good. So we'll see if by the end, have we converted that 3.5 into a 4? And if anyone else's numbers have also gone up. So we'll check back in at the end with that. So here are the learning objectives. I do work as an instructional designer. I do specifically work with adult learners. So anytime I teach anything to anyone, I need to be able to tell you all what you will be able to learn by the end of this session. So this is what everybody will be able to do by the end of this session. If it feels a little intimidating for 8 a.m., don't worry, it's being recorded. And I'm always available if anyone has any follow-up questions after the fact. A little bit about me before we get started. As Katie introduced, I have been a volunteer with ReEstablish Richmond since 2018. I have helped 4 people prepare and actually take the citizenship exams. And you'll see I have naturalization in parentheses. I use the terms interchangeably, but the process is officially becoming a naturalized citizen, but I use the 2 interchangeably, like I said. 3 of the clients that I have helped successfully passed, and 1 unfortunately failed. And I think we need to talk about what happens if someone fails. So we'll cover that later in the presentation. And then just in the first bullet, just some other, street credentials and things like that. All right. Oh, this picture. This is my most recent exam client. She and I worked together for over a year, just preparing for the citizenship exam and preparing her English to be good enough for the exam. And I invited myself to her oath ceremony, and the judge who led the oath ceremony was a pro. He lined up afterwards and made himself available to anybody and everybody who wanted a photo with him. So she and I got together and we did that. If you haven't ever been to an oath ceremony, I highly, highly encourage it. It was one of the most amazing experiences to witness. All right. So I think it's important that we talk about just overall, what does the naturalization interview look like? So this comes after your client has submitted their N-400, which is the application. I don't know too much about that other than that it's apparently very easy if you should do it online as opposed to via paper. And then after the biometric appointment is scheduled, everything is handled by USCIS. They will schedule you, they will send you notices. And typically when you, at least for how it's working right now, things may change in the future as turn times get adjusted. But typically from the moment your client gets notified that their naturalization interview has been scheduled, it's about 2 months out. In my opinion, 2 months is not enough time for even a native speaker, English speaker, to be able to prepare for everything. So I would encourage you and encourage your clients to start as early as possible, because it's a lot of content to remember. And we'll get into that. The actual naturalization interview is actually in 2 parts. So the USCIS officer will invite your client into their office, and you will have essentially a chat. And I do use the term chat very loosely because the officer is essentially quizzing your client about the content that is on their N-400. So dates, travel, there's a whole section where they have to attest things like if they lived in Germany between 1939 and 1945, they were not a member of the Nazi Party. And it was really interesting having to explain what the Nazi Party was to my client who was from Afghanistan. But the whole point of all of the interview and the application review is to suss out how well does your client know English? Are they able to have a back and forth discussion about their own information? So they're not being asked anything about the citizenship exams yet. It's just their own information. When is your birthday? Where were you born? So they have to be able to answer those types of questions. And essentially anything that is on the N-400, the officer could inquire about. Once that is over, then your client will begin the citizenship exam process. And again, this is all to suss out basic English proficiency and knowledge of the United States. And this is actually required by legislation, and it does cover all of the English modalities. So reading, writing, speaking, and comprehending. A big thing to talk about, while the 2020 exam is no longer being administered, do not think that that is the current version that is being administered. It's actually the 2008 version that you and your client want to make sure that you are studying for. So 2020 is out. I'm going to kick it old school for lack of a silly metaphor, like it was 2008 still. So just make sure that you and your client are using the right resources. The 2020 exam resources are still on the USCIS website. However, it was only utilized for applicants who took their exams in 2020 or the first few months of 2021. So nobody should be using the 2020 version anymore. 2008. If that's the one thing you take away from this presentation, I'd like it to be that the 2008 version is the only version you should be utilizing at this time. USCIS is undergoing a process of revising and releasing a new exam that is still in the design phase. It hasn't been administered to anybody but pilot groups yet, but just keep informed that for now, until you're instructed otherwise, it's the 2008 version.
And Amanda, we have a question
Yes.
in the chat that I think builds off of what you just said. Do you have any sense of when that new version is likely to come out, or it's so hard to tell? What would you say?
Yeah, I would think, and I don't know this specifically, I've only attended one webinar about what USCIS was thinking about doing for the redesign, and they were sourcing feedback. So I would say we're at least a year out because they're still in the feedback gathering stage. But I can certainly share another date if I hear it. But I would think it's at least a year out.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So let's get into the citizenship exams, S plural. There are 3 that your client needs to take. So that's the civics exam, that is the reading exam, and that is the writing exam. Let's talk about the civics exam first. I think this is the most well-known of the exams. Give me an emoji if you remember seeing exam questions on 4th of July with the headline, "Can you pass the US citizenship exam?" It's maybe, oh, I see a few emojis. So again, it's the most well-known exam, but certainly not the only one. However, it is the one with, I think, the biggest lift. And by lift, I mean cognitive lift, because you do have to study and essentially memorize 100 questions and answers. The USCIS officer will verbally ask you the questions, and you need to verbally respond. However, you have to respond in English. They will ask 10 questions in total. And once you have answered 6 correctly, the exam is over and you have passed. So it's okay if you, for example, get question 1 right, miss question 2, and as long as you get the next 5 or so questions correct in any order, you will be good to go, and they will immediately stop the civics exam. So 100 questions to study from, 10 are asked, and you just need to answer 6 correctly to pass. Now, for, oh, excuse me, if your applicant or your client is over 65 years of age and they have been a lawful permanent resident or LPR for more than 20 years, they are given a special version of the civics exam to take. And this is called the special consideration exam. Instead of studying all 100 questions, they only have to study 20, and they're specially marked in the exam booklet. And the exam is administered in the language of the applicant's choice. Like the regular civics exam, they will ask 10 questions and you need to answer any 6 correctly to pass. So it's normally not, appropriate in our culture to ask people about ages, but if you suspect your client fits both criteria, because it does have to be both LPR for 20 plus years and being 65 years or older, they will be able to qualify for that special consideration version of the civics exam. So if you suspect that that's potentially where they fit, chat with them about it. USCIS will be able to schedule them for that automatically based on the information that's on their N400, and then confirm it with them at the biometrics appointment. All right, the last important thing to tell you about the civics exam, of those 100 questions, 10 questions have variable answers, which means as we hold elections, as our government changes, and or as your client moves, the answers to those questions will change. So for right now, who is the president of the United States? Everyone is good to go if they say Joe Biden or even just Biden. But in 4 years, when we have our, well, less than 4 years, when we have our next election, that answer will change. So you do want to be aware of those 10 questions with variable answers. It's going to impact the general regular civics exam and the special consideration version of the civics exam. And USCIS has a page of their website where Remember, you go to the 2008 version and it will show you all 10 questions and how to look up the answers. I encourage you to do this exercise with your client because there's a really good learning opportunity in the fact that you can get to explain to them how answers will change based on how our government and politics work. So I encourage you to do that with your client. Before, Katie, any questions that have come in about the civics exam before we move into the writing and reading exams?
We are good. Everything that's in the chat is just a couple extra emojis for you at the moment.
Oh, awesome. Great, 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 great. Okay. Next, your client will take the reading exam. This is administered via a tablet. So the officer will, from what I understand, it's kind of like mounted and they just kind of spin it around. And 3 sentences will be displayed. Your client only needs to read one of them correctly. And what exactly is correctly? Well, USCIS is not expecting perfect English. If anyone went to Laura's teaching English session yesterday, one of the things she talked about was accents and how our clients will have accents. So accents are okay. If they mispronounce something entirely, that's okay too, as long as it was very clear to the USCIS officer that they were trying to say the correct word. So an example sentence is, what colors are on the American flag? There is a resource list that goes over all of the words that will be included on the reading exam. And it might be a really fun exercise to cut those words up, type them up really big, cut them up and make your own sentences with them, because that's essentially what USCIS is doing. So remember, there's going to be 3 sentences and your client only needs to read one correctly. I have been told that the reading and writing exams are a little bit linked in that the sentence the client reads is not always, but it's often a question. And then it's the answer that the client has to demonstrate they can write out for the writing exam. So take it for what it's worth. It may not always be the case. Now, the writing exam is administered orally and via a tablet. So your client will be given, I believe it's a stylus, but they can also just use their finger to write on the tablet. The USCIS officer will read 3 sentences aloud, and your client just needs to write 1 sentence that they heard correctly. Spelling mistakes do not count, as long as it's clear that your client was trying to write the correct word. So for example, here's the writing sentence. The flag is red, white, and blue. If they leave off the E in blue, that's okay, because it's very clear that they knew the right answer and they were trying to write it out to the best of their ability. So spelling mistakes are okay. That's one thing your client does not need to worry about, but they do have to be really clear on what the right answer is and the best way to write that. Katie, any questions about the reading or writing exams before we move on?
Not in the chat, but I will ask one that may come up a little later. For folks with hearing impairments, how is something like this adjusted?
Yeah, so USCIS does make one-off exceptions for accessibility accommodations. So that's something the client, I believe, needs to indicate on the N400 and then confirm at their biometrics appointment.
Awesome, thanks.
Absolutely. All right. So after all that, the application review, casual chat about, everything you've done for the last 5 years. And then you take 3 exams. Your client gets told what they passed and or failed. It's very possible your client can pass the civics exam and maybe not do so hot on the reading and writing exam. no matter what they have failed, it's really important to understand that USCIS will only give one retake opportunity. So the USCIS officer will give them a form that will indicate what exactly they will need to retake. And that's the only portions of the exams that they're required to retake when they come back for their retake appointment. Could be a mix of things. It could have been subject matter that they did not know who the current president was, and or their English prevented them from communicating the right answer properly. Could be a mix of the two, or it could just be one or the other. USCIS will automatically reschedule them. Currently, it's like a 1 or 2 month turnaround time for that retake appointment. But again, they don't need to restudy everything. They just need to follow what the form indicates that they need to improve upon. I've seen this form. It is very simple. And by simple, I mean for us to be able to identify where our client went wrong, and so that we can then help them with preparing for the retake exam. Study resources. Once the client has filled out their N400 and they've gone to, everyone in our region goes to the Virginia Beach office, and they go to the Virginia Beach office for their biometrics appointment, they will be given the pocket study guide. It's a little teeny tiny book of a thing that you can literally fit in your pocket. It has a blue cover. Those are given to everybody free of charge by USCIS. It is also available for free in Spanish and also in English. So if your client loses it, you can just print them out a new copy from the USCIS website. Everything that is in that pocket study guide is literally everything that we've pretty much gone over or will go over. And also all of the resources that are on USCIS's website support that pocket study guide. I would encourage you to only use the resources that are on the USCIS website. For one, they're free. Two, you're guaranteed to always have the right answers. And they are available in a multiple variety of formats. There's an MP3 audio file that you can download to your client's phone in English, just so that they can hear the questions and the answers, minus those 10 variable answers being read aloud. So at least that gets them familiar with hearing things in English and also being able to just have that muscle memory built up. The resources are also available in multiple languages. I have yet to find a language that is not supported on the USCIS website. So again, there's no real need to go elsewhere, although you certainly can if that's what you feel your client needs. And there are also some interactive practice tests. So that might be a really cool thing for you and your client to go through. You reading the question to them verbally answering, very much simulating and role-playing what their actual naturalization interview will be like.
And Amanda, I'll just point out really quickly, Helen was holding up a second ago a copy of the guide too, if that's helpful for people to see. So keep an eye on that.
Awesome. So this is what just a small screenshot of what the study page looks like. You can filter by topic, you can sort by resource type. I would encourage you to just go through everything that they have and start pulling aside the ones that you think would be helpful to clients, and just kind of build up your own bookmark arsenal, a toolkit, if you will, of being able to have these resources available at your disposal and being able to share them quickly. Thank you. I see someone shared the pocket study guide. And then I'm also going to, Helen, can you, if you can, drop the PDF resources links that I put together it just goes over some of the resource links that I've most commonly used with my 4 clients, and just so that they're in one quick and easy to locate PDF document. So for tutors, what are the most important things to know? Again, first and foremost, please use the 2008 version, which is the current version of the exams. Be really careful if you're sharing non-USCIS resources with your client. I know there's a lot of videos on YouTube and flashcards on Quizlet. Just double check again that it's the right version, that the answers are correct, and have a way to talk through the variable answers with your client for any of the non-USCIS resources that you may share with them. I would strongly encourage you to, on your first session, if that's all you do on the first session, is go through those variable answers with your client and show them how you look up the information to find out what the answers are. USCIS has the scoring guidelines posted, which tells you exactly what their metrics are for why someone passes versus why someone fails. So as a tutor, I would just encourage you to read through that so that you can know what to better coach your clients on. Remember, typos don't matter as long as the meaning is not disrupted or changed as a result of that typo. So go through that scoring guide so you can coach accordingly. Just remember that pronunciation and spelling matter to a degree. If the answer to the question is California, for the best of their ability, they have to be able to say California or write California in a way that it's clear they were writing California and not Colorado. And then I would just share, as I was self-taught in this process and kind of learned as I went along and helped my first 3 clients. By the time I helped my 4th client, I was a pro. But for the first 3 clients that I helped, I did a lot of learning as I went along. I will say that everything that you may have a question about is somewhere on the uscis.gov website. Be really familiar with just clicking through the pages, reading everything. I will say that they do a really good job of being transparent, what they're grading on, what all the resources are. So definitely read up as much as you can so that you can be the most informed tutor for your client.
Amanda, we have a question in the chat, and Christine, feel free to jump in if you'd like to talk about this more too. But Christine is asking, have any of your clients had trick questions during their interviews? For example, we've had clients report that they were asked, is everything on your application false? And follow-up questions, like after they say they pay their taxes, one man was asked why.
Yeah. Yeah. So the application part of the interview, the application review, is a little tricky because the USCIS officer is very much responding to how your client is answering questions. Because remember, they're sussing out truthful answers, but they're also sussing out English proficiency. So with my 3rd client, she did fail her initial exam. And she specifically failed the application review part because she did not realize that, and I did not realize at the time, that they were going to ask her random questions. I believe it's from, it's section J, where it's like all of the attestations. Like, I was not a member of a paramilitary organization. She got very confused on what paramilitary was because she heard military and thought, oh, military is good. They're our friends. And so, so she and I, it's tricky just because there's not a single set of form questions they're meant to ask, because they are just responding on the fly to how well your client is demonstrating their English ability. I don't want to say it's a trick question, but it can be very tricky because of the English proficiency requirement. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, our experience has been too that the attestation portion of it is complicated for them. We spend a lot of time defining some of the terms in there, and I don't want to slam our government, but a lot of those questions are worded really hard for non-English speakers. Or second language. It's tough, but I don't know if there's just one officer or if, and he's the exception, but I've had a couple of them come back from their first interview and really thinking they've done well and still failing. And it would hinge on some of these weird questions, like the one that I mentioned in the chat. And so the more I hear them, the more I try to prepare for the ones I know have happened, but I didn't know if you had any other sort of anecdotal trick questions that we should be looking. It's better to over prepare them than under prepare them. So
no, absolutely. Yeah, I would definitely say definitely encourage your client to review the N400 that they submitted, especially if your client has done a lot of traveling, because they will ask about travel dates. But I'm with you on the self-attestation section. I'm pretty sure it's section J. Again, because they're still asking questions about if you lived in Nazi Germany between 1930 and 1945. My client wasn't even alive, and she wasn't even from Germany. So it's very much an outdated question. I feel like some of those could absolutely be a little streamlined and modernized and simplified to actually reflect more of what our clients are actually experiencing and or know of in the world.
And then Amanda, we have just one more question. Sorry to keep it, but is there any information about the percentage of test takers who pass the exam on the first time? Does anyone have data on that or any information about that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, because I have literally gone through, because again, all the answers to my questions I found on uscis.gov. There is a section where they go over testing data. None of it I am remembering this early in the morning. I apologize, but I can for sure tell you that there is a page. I will email the link to Helen and she can release it when she releases the copy of the slide deck. It'll take you directly there and you can see all of that data, but it does exist and I've seen it. I just can't remember it at this moment. I hope that helps. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think I might have found it. So I'll plug at least one option in the chat, and if there's others too, we'll go from
Great,
there.
thank you. Oh yeah, that's it. I can tell from the link. Great, thanks, Katie. All right, so we just zipped through the information, but I want to do a closing check-in. So now that you've gone through this session, rate your knowledge of the U.S. citizenship exams. And I really want to hear from that 3.5. Did we convert you to a 4 or higher? Maybe you're a 4.5 now, I don't know. But just respond in chat what your number is now following this session.
And Amanda, oh good, okay, I wanted to make sure. And our 3.5 has indeed become a 4.5.
Yes. Excellent. Awesome. All right. That was everything that I wanted to go over and prepare. Hopefully everyone else feels a lot more confident now in their ability to help their clients prepare, because you know exactly what they're going to be going through. But does anybody else have any questions or anything else they want to chat about? Because I know we have some time left.
You're getting a lot of enthusiastic thanks in the chat. Yeah,
Oh,
you'll
great.
be able to see that now. That's awesome.
Great.
My question's about retaking the test. I know I spoke yesterday that they only have one, if they fail, they only have one time to take the test. And that's it.
That is it. It's pretty intimidating. I still have to find out if because that one retake exam is tied to their N400 and their original application fee. I still am not clear on if the client can ever reapply and pay a new application fee and do an N400. I might just have to buck down and call. It's the one answer I can't find on the website. So I might just have to call and wait on hold for a bit. But yes, with the one application fee and the one N400, they get an interview and one retake should anything fail.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely want to know that too, Christine. I will try and call next week and definitely pass on to Helen what I find out so she can share it with everybody else.
Okay.
Amanda, would you talk a little more? You mentioned a couple times the biometric appointment. Could you just, I think I might have missed sort of what that is in the context of the different appointments that folks are going to.
So it predates the naturalization interview where they come in and take the exams, but it happens after they have submitted their N400 and of course paid their fee. They just have to show up and do fingerprints and I believe get a photo taken so that it can be attached to their file, and the fingerprints are run as part of the background check. Yes, definitely, Christine. If you can email Helen, she'll put you in contact with me. I didn't share my contact information with the presentation, I'm sorry. But if you reach out to Helen, she can connect you with me and we can definitely schedule time to have a coffee chat about citizenship. See, I'm telling you, we're onto something here. Coffee and citizenship. It's a thing now. Yes, Sarah, I see you in that mug.
I wonder if, since we have a little bit of time, Helen and Kate, especially since you are on the call, and Amanda, this might be a question for you too, but I wonder if it'd be useful to talk a little bit about ReEstablish Richmond's approach to citizenship exams and sort of how you pair volunteers and clients, and maybe like the need for those things. It seems like that might be helpful information for people to have.
Yeah, so for clients who we pair our clients with mentors to help them study for the citizenship test after they've already submitted their application and have a test date in place. But for a lot of our clients, they know that this is something they want to do, but usually they're like, well, when I'm ready, when my English is good, I'll apply. But for now, they want to focus on their English. So that's just, another plug here for our need for English tutors, even for people who, have specific goals of studying for their citizenship test. But we have a citizenship team of volunteers. Amanda is part of that. So whenever I have someone who has a test date coming up in a month or two, I shoot them an email and see who's available to help someone prepare.
And I'll also just jump in, if you are an English tutor and you know that it is a goal of your clients to start working on citizenship exam, if they're willing and able, I would encourage you to start studying with them earlier, just because from the moment USCIS emails you or mails you a letter with your date for your application interview and exams, it's only like 2 months, and I just don't think that's enough time. Even for a native speaker, I wouldn't recommend it. And I definitely don't for our newcomer neighbors who have already gone through so much and are trying to do so much, and English is hard anyway. I would just, if you know that that's a goal of theirs, I would just say start working in some of the vocabulary at least so that they can get that ready.
That's great. And I know you had a lot of enthusiasm in the chat when you were suggesting sort of that sentence composition exercise, which was really cool to hear about. So it's amazing. Yeah, really exciting to think about the pair of those things. Are there any other questions that are coming up for folks? Or things we haven't asked you, Amanda, that you want to make sure? This was such a really thorough presentation. I love the attention to outcomes, especially.
Oh, thank you. like I said, I work with adult learners, so it was like right up my alley. I would just say, if there's something you don't know, do not be afraid to tell your client. It's a good question. I have to look that up. Because I think so much of anyone who has gone through an American school education, we've already learned everything that's on the citizenship exam, but we did it in like 4th grade or 5th grade, or whenever. So if there's something you don't know, I would just say it's okay to say that you don't know, and you need to look it up, because it's 200 years of history and you just don't remember that on a dime.
I think that's a really beautiful note to end on, that sense of unknowingness and being willing to sort of admit what we don't know and what we're going to go learn and find out. So Amanda, thank you for your time this morning. This has been really amazing. And I think we have a little bit of time now between now and the next session, which starts at 9. So we can obviously hang out for some casual chat stuff, because I think this link will stay open. But if folks need to stretch their legs between now and the next session, you've got some time for that too. So Amanda, I'm going to do, in addition to thank you, a big applause reaction.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I did just drop a PDF into the chat. It's the resource list that I spoke of earlier, and you can just download that to whatever device you're on, and it's a nice little takeaway to have, I hope.